Hi, Year 10. So for today's lesson, you're going to be looking at comparative essay structure. I mentioned to you that now that you have the assignment, we're going to start to look at the structure of how you would write your essay. So what we have here on the screen is obviously an overview, which looks pretty similar to the essay structure template on your task sheet. What I've done here is I've just filled in for you how perhaps, and this is a recommended structure, but how you could look at structuring your comparative essay. So in the beginning, we start with an introduction, which I always say is the top bun on the burger, okay? And what you need to include in your introduction are 3 dot points. So you need to give a bit of context, a bit of background as to what each text type is about, the actual text type it is. So is it a visual, a political cartoon? Is it an excerpt from an autobiography? Or is it perhaps a poem, for example? So you need to introduce the text type, give a brief background on the text, and that can just be a sentence or so. Also include the publishing information of each text. In your introduction, the majority of your introduction will consist of what we call an extended thesis. And guys, an extended thesis is really just a thesis that is more than one statement. It means that it's extended beyond one statement, kind of like an extended metaphor. So your extended thesis will talk about the purpose and the audience of each text and how identity is portrayed in each text as well. And then you'll briefly state some broad similarities and differences between text 1 and text 2. And I am going to show you how this looks this lesson in an actual essay. Your first body paragraph will be about the first text and purpose. So how or what is the purpose of this text? What's the intended message that the author is trying to communicate? And how has identity been showcased in text 1? So really text 1 isn't very comparative. You're just analyzing straight away text 1, purpose, and how is identity being showcased? What message is the author trying to convey? In other words, what is their purpose here in this text? So the second body paragraph is then also about purpose, but it's about text 2 this time, okay? And rather than just talking about its purpose and how identity is showcased, we actually do a comparison. So we present the information about the second text and we compare it to what's already been discussed in that first text, in the first body paragraph. So it's text 1 purpose, text 2 purpose. And when we talk about text 2's purpose, so the overall intended message, what is it trying to communicate to the reader and why was it written in the first place? We then also talk about how identity is showcased and has it been showcased similarly or differently in comparison to the body paragraph 1. Remembering that when we talk about each of these body paragraphs, we are still following Peel, okay? So I haven't put Peel into this specifically because you know Peel already, and we are just adding on, consolidating your knowledge of Peel. So in each of these body paragraphs, yes, you are using Peel. What is your point? Explain your point a little bit further. The evidence, remember, will always be authorial choices, okay? And then you'll explain the evidence that you have, the authorial choices, so formal or stylistic features, and link it to your point. So we are still using Peel in each of these body paragraphs. Body paragraph 3, then year 10, will be about audience. So we go back to text 1, we start to talk about the audience. Who is this particular text being aimed at? Who is the intended or target audience that the author or poet of this text has aimed it towards? Okay, how do you know that? Let's do Peel. You know it because then you will use authorial choices to back that point up. And again, you're going to see what that looks like in an exemplar essay today. The other thing you need to look at in body paragraph 3 is how are the authorial choices that you've used, how are they used to that the author's used, how have they been used to communicate a particular message to the specific target audience? So what authorial choices has the author put in place? Is it color? Is it perhaps the layout of the text? Is it the structure of how many stanzas they've used, for example? Is it the amount of rhyming patterns that you see, for example, in the text? And how does that work to communicate a particular message to those specific target audience, okay? You'll then repeat that for body paragraph 4, But when you get to your last dot point and your second last dot point in body paragraph 4, which is here, you need to ask yourself, does the target audience differ in text 2? Is it different to text 1? Or is it the same as text 1? Do they have different target audiences? And then how are the authorial choices that are used in text 2 to communicate a particular message about identity? How are they similar or different in the audience that they're trying to reach and the message that's trying to reach the audience? So you're really looking at who's the audience of text 1? How do I know this? Because you find some specific language features or formal features that give you that clue. And then in body paragraph 4, you're also doing the same thing, but you're saying, in comparison to text 1, text 2 is aimed at ... okay? Perhaps people who are migrants or immigrants. And this is clear in the language that's used in stanza 1, where the poet says, blah, 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 okay? And you would insert your quote there. The next thing you do in that paragraph, I'm still on body paragraph 4, is that you need to then say, and this is where you do that when you're explaining your evidence, is there any difference when we compare that to how authorial choices are used to communicate a message to the audience in text 1, okay? So we're going text 1, purpose, text 2, purpose, text 1, audience, text 2, audience, and then to conclude, you need to restate your main point. So really we're just summarizing the purpose and the target audience of each text, restating a few of the main similarities and differences, and then guys, you're concluding with a statement outlining how each text communicates that global issue of identity similarly or differently, okay? That's your general structure. Now, last week we had a look at these two texts because we started to look at some exemplar paragraphs. Today you're actually going to look at an exemplar essay. So this is text 1 that the exemplar will talk about, and you have seen this last week. This is text 2 that the exemplar will talk about, and you've also seen this last week as well. So this is what they're using for their comparison. So if you go to Google Classroom, what you will see is a copy of the comparative essay exemplar. You'll also see a copy of the marking criteria, and what you need to do are these 3 things. Consider the following. So what grade would you award the essay for each criteria and why? Number or letter B, question B, what grade would you award the essay overall and why? And then C, to what extent do you think that the student actually answers the guiding assessment question that's on your task sheet? So we're reading the exemplar essay, having a look at what would you award it for each criterion, what would you award it overall, okay, and how well have they actually answered the guiding question. So I want you to have a read of this, okay, all the way to the bottom. Then you'll be able to see on Google Classroom as well the criteria that you can have a quick click on, okay? And once you've done that, guys, we're going to come back together and I'm going to tell you what I would grade it, okay? And we'll have a chat about what was done well and what wasn't done so well. So I'll see you in a few minutes.